StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily masterclass. And what you're listening to right now, this is not a podcast, it's a masterclass. It is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is my way or the highway. When to be a dictator in life. Now, I'll give a shout out to Christina. She's the one who Christina's a person that I know. Y'all don't know her, but I know her. And she said that she had listened to some episodes of this show. And she said that, Dre, it seems like sometimes when you're talking about certain topics, you have a my way or the highway mentality. That your way of seeing things is just the way for them to be seen. And anybody who's not seeing them the same way as you is wrong. Now, on some levels, I can agree with that. On some levels, I do not. But she used that phrase. It's not like I never heard the phrase before, but it was the first time I heard anyone use it when they were talking directly to me like that. And I said, you know what, it's actually a good idea. I can make a whole master class off of that. So shout out to Christina for seeding the idea for this episode that I'm going to talk about right here today. Now, before I get further into this, let me tell everyone that I have a text line where I want you to text me and tell me the best insight that you've gotten from today's masterclass or any others. Anything, any question, follow-up, comment, question, concern, criticism, complaint. From anything you hear today, my number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. So one thing about me that some of you know and some of you will learn is that one way that I'm able to keep this show going, the way that I'm able to have, I don't even know how many episodes we have here. We're creeping up on 2,000. We are over 1,800 episodes of the show. I'm just looking at my notes here. We're almost at 1,900 when you're listening to this. But we're going to keep this show going for as long as we can, as long as these apps and platforms are the way to do it, and we'll figure out other ways to do it if and when that changes, is because I use everything as material. Everything's material. So somebody could say something to me that they're even levying at me as maybe somewhat of a lightweight criticism, maybe a critique, maybe a question, maybe just some feedback, maybe something that somebody's just saying offhand, they don't even mean it to stick. But I'm listening to everything, and I always have considered myself a sponge when it comes to just listening and information. Everything can become material. So this is an example of me doing that. So today's topic again is my way or the highway, when to be a dictator. Let's get a definition of what it means to be a dictator. Definition: a ruler with total power over a country, typically one who has obtained control by force. Now, this is in contrast. I'm out of the definition now. This is in contrast to being someone who's more democratic. Dictator and democratic person are kind of opposites. The democratic type of situation, in a democratic situation, you will be doing things by majority rules. In other words, you ask everyone how they feel, and then we see whichever idea gets the most votes, then we do that. Or you ask the group what it thinks, and you rule by everybody kind of coming to a consensus together, and we do things that way. That's a democracy. The United States of America is supposed to be a democracy, and I think for the most part it is. A dictatorship is the exact opposite, where it is one person or maybe a small group of people who are in control, and whatever they decide, that's the way it's going, i.e. my way or the highway, and it doesn't matter what the group or the larger organization thinks. It only matters what the dictator thinks. Today, what I'm going to tell you is when it's okay to not be democratic and become a dictator and say, look, this is the way the things are going, and that's it. Is there a time to do that? Yes, there is. I'm going to tell you when it is. Point number one. Topic, once again, is my way or the highway, when to be a dictator. Number one, when things need to be done urgently and you know what you're doing, you should be a dictator. You need something done now and you know exactly how it needs to be done, or you are the one who's actually going to do it. You don't need to ask everybody else what they think. You don't need to poll the audience. You don't need to get a consensus amongst the group. You need to just do what the hell you need to do. One of my coaches in college gave us a pamphlet at the beginning of the season. And in this pamphlet, one of the first pages, he had like all these inspirational quotes. And one of the quotes was, you don't need permission to do what's right. You just need the courage to do what's right. And that's what I mean here in point number one. There is no need to poll the audience or consult with the larger group when you know what the right action is and you know how to get it done. You just need to move on. You just need the courage and the initiative to move on what you know is right. You don't have time for a consultation. All right. Sometimes in life, you have to execute what we call an executive decision. What is an executive decision? Executive decision means there may not be a clear-cut right answer to a situation. Maybe it's just a judgment call. And I talked about your skill of judgment in the episode on discernment. Let me make sure I can pull that up for you here. That was episode, I mentioned this so much I should know the numbers. Episode 1431, your skill of perception and judgment. Sometimes in life there is no right answer. You just have to make a judgment call, and you can't poll the group on a judgment call that doesn't have a right answer. Now, if there's a clear right answer, you should poll the group, because then you can make sure you get it right. But if it's a judgment call, somebody has to step up and say, all right, I'm going to take responsibility for whatever results from the action that we take here, but I'm going to make the decision, and this is what we're going to do. If it's right, then it ends up being right. And if it's wrong, then it's wrong, and we'll do what we got to do from that point. But we can't sit around here and just twiddle our thumbs and think about it when there's no clear answer. Sometimes in life, you must make an executive decision. If you claim to be a leader in life, you plan on being a leader, or you already are a leader, you must be willing to make executive decisions. The purpose of the executive decision, again, is there is no clear-cut right answer, but you're going to take control and make the call and take responsibility for that call. Many people in life shy away from making executive decisions for one reason, because their fear of being wrong. Their fear of everyone looking back later on in hindsight and saying, well, you made the executive decision and it ended up being the wrong call. If you are afraid of that happening to you, you are not cut out for leadership. I'm pausing to let that one sink in. I'm going to say it one more time. Many people shy away from making executive decisions in their own lives and in their businesses and even within a group. If you're the most knowledgeable, smartest, most experienced person in the group, you should be willing to make executive decisions in that group. Even if you end up being wrong, many people shy away from making an executive decision because they're afraid of being wrong. Because they don't want anyone to come back to them later and say, well, hey, you made the decision and you ended up being wrong. Understand something. I've told you this before. The possibility of being right carries with it the possibility of being wrong. You can't open yourself up to the possibility of winning without also taking on, in a package deal, the possibility of losing. You can't take on the possibility of having a great life without also taking on a package deal, the inevitability that you're going to die. All right, these all come together. You cannot get one by itself. All right, you can't get winning without losing. You can't get life without death. You can't get being right without being wrong. All right, you have to take on, again, it's like a package deal. You want this one, you got to take that one too. And many people are afraid of taking the other one. They just want the one that is the winning thing, the good thing, the thing that they want. But you got to take on both sides of it. It's just the balance, the yin and the yang of life. Point number two, and this is one more thing on point number one. This is the dichotomy of leadership. All right, this is what comes with leadership. And I have many episodes where I've talked about leadership here on this show. Let me refer you to a couple episodes before we go further. Episode 1153, The Mirror in the Window, was all about leadership. Episode 932, The Leadership in the Broken Window Theory. Go listen to the 2 episodes I did on Amazon's 14 Principles of Leadership. Amazon laid these out, and they talked about this one specifically in their 14 Principles, Part 1 and Part 2. This episode's number 895 and 896. Those are Amazon's 14 Principles of Leadership, which I laid out and talked about in detail those 2 episodes. Episode 891, How to Assume a Leadership Role Anywhere That You Go. Episode number 467, Leadership 101, How to Put Your Own Work In. Episode 291, The 3 Questions of Leadership. Episode 261, The Hardest Test of Our Leadership. Episode 185, Leadership, Who Are You Attracting and Why? Again, all the links to all those episodes are down below in the show notes, or you can just go to workonyourgamepodcast.com, where we have every episode in the history of the show right there on the page. You can listen to any one of them right now, completely for free. So anything that I refer you to here on this show, you go listen to it right now at workonyourgamepodcast.com. Now let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is my way or the highway, when to be a dictator in life. Number 2, when things need to be done in a specific way and you are not open to any variation. That's a good time to be a dictator. One example I can give you right now, it's fresh on my mind, is in the NBA. The NBA finals have not yet started as of this recording. By the time you hear this, the finals may have begun. But there's a player on the Phoenix Suns, that's the Western Conference representative in the NBA finals, by the name of Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul is sometimes affectionately referred to as the point god. Not the point guard, but the point god, because Chris Paul is statistically one of the greatest point guards of all time. The only person close to him statistically at that position is a guy by the name of Magic Johnson, who I think all of you have heard of, even if you don't watch basketball, because Chris Paul has been so consistently great over his career. But this year is his first time making NBA Finals, and he's been in the league maybe 13, 14 years. He's in his mid-30s right now. But one thing about Chris Paul that everyone agrees with, and Chris Paul himself agrees with, is that Chris Paul is kind of a perfectionist when it comes to the way he plays basketball. And his teammates, the players that he plays with, he is very, very specific as to how he wants them to do things, like how they set a screen. He will stop a practice. I've heard stories of this. He will stop a practice and correct one of his teammates on where exactly they need to stand when they set a screen for him, or how exactly to position themselves when they grab a rebound, or how exactly they're going to run a play, or how they're going to defend certain actions by the other team when his team is on defense. And he's very, very meticulous and specific about it. Watches maybe more game film than anybody. He'll text coaches all times of the night, asking them questions about certain actions that he sees other teams running in other games that he's watching on TV. Very, very specific. But Chris Paul is he's very dictator-like in the way that he plays his position in the NBA. And again, Chris Paul himself would agree with this, and every player who's played with him has pretty much said this, that he is very much a dictator in the way that he runs things on his team. Now, I'm not saying you need to be like Chris Paul, and I'm not saying that's the only way to do things, but this example I'm giving you of Chris Paul is exemplary of the point that I'm making here in point number 2. When you want things done in a specific way, and you are not open to a variation of that way, you need to be a dictator and tell people, no, we're not going to do it your way. We're going to do it my way. And that's the only way that it's going to be done. This is my way or the highway. Now understand, this is not always good. Sometimes being like this doesn't work. And sometimes it does. So this again, episode 1431, this is where your skill of discernment comes in. You must develop the judgment to know when should you become a dictator and say, no, we need to do things absolutely my way, and when should you be a little bit more lenient and a little bit more malleable and say, you know what, I'm open to the way we can do this. We can do this a little bit different. This is the way I want to do it, but if someone has a better idea or a different idea, let's test them out and let's find out what works and what doesn't. For example, in digital marketing, I tell people this all the time when people ask me, well, you know, what should I put here? What should I say here? How should my headline look? I tell people all the time, the data decides. It's always that the data decides in digital marketing. In other words, for those who don't know what I mean, make sure I'm not going over anybody's head here. If you're running ads and you're sending traffic to a web page, for example, if you go to thirddaybook.com or you go to mirrorofmotivation.com, both of those are sales funnels, the front ends of sales funnels. I always have split tests going on those pages, meaning if you go to that page right now today and you see the headline, if you come to the page tomorrow and the same web page, you might see a different headline because we have split tests running that are testing different headlines against each other. How do I know which headline is better? It's not based on what I think. It's not based on my emotions or my feelings, or it's not even based on what you think. It is based on the data. The data saying, or which one of these pages is leading to more people putting their information in the page, which one is leading to more people actually getting the book and completing the transaction. That's the one that's winning. That's the one we're going to keep. We're going to throw the other one away, and then we're going to test another one. We're going to keep testing until we get the best ones. You look at a website like, for example, Amazon. Amazon probably gets, I don't even know the number, but let's just say probably 1 million hits a day to their web. They probably have 1 million unique visitors coming through their website and their apps every single day. I think it's pretty safe to say that. Amazon is split testing and they're testing colors, they're testing buttons, they're testing verbiage, they're testing where they place the images, they're testing where they put the reviews. They're testing that stuff all day, every day, because they have so much traffic that they get a lot of statistically relevant results like every 5 minutes, because they get so much traffic coming to their website. And you don't notice the testing, but they know that the testing is going on the back end. The whole point is they're going off the data, how that site is designed. So everything you see when you go to Amazon, that's not some genius who just says, well, we're going to design things the way I want. That's years and millions of hits of testing that has told them that this is the way that this site should be designed. And when they make changes, that's because the data told them to change things. The point is, I'm telling you all of that to say this. Sometimes it's good to be a dictator and say, we're just going to do it my way. Other times you want to default to something else, like the data, or default to the group, or default to, hey, let's just be open to interpretation here and let's see what works and what doesn't. if you get a job at, let's just say, McDonald's, actually Amazon as well, you get a job at McDonald's or Amazon, it's probably a good idea rather, to just follow their process, because they've been around longer than you and their process has been tested through millions of iterations. So we know that their system works. If you work at Amazon, I read this New York Times story about workers at Amazon and how Amazon has a whole system for measuring your productivity at work. Like how much time does it take you when an order comes through? Let's say you go order something on Amazon, right? You order some headphones for working out, and that order comes through to a person in a certain shipping facility. Amazon has this whole complex system, and it works very smoothly. I think we can all agree. But it comes through to the worker at the Amazon warehouse. Now they have to go pick and pack that item. So they go grab the item off the shelf. The Amazon system tells them exactly where it is in the warehouse, and I'm sure these warehouses are huge. Go grab the item off the shelf, put it in whatever it got to be put into, put the label on it, and put it wherever it goes for it to be shipped out. Amazon has a system that measures how much time it takes you from the time you are told about the item to the time that you actually get it picked, packed, and put wherever it needs to go, the proper receptacle, so that it can be shipped out to whoever it ships out to. And Amazon's system will promote or fire you based on how much time it takes you to pick and pack every single order that comes through over the course of your shift every single day. Now, when I read that, I didn't know that, but I would assume when I read it, I said, yeah, that makes sense. There's no way they can be this efficient the way that they are. I mean, for example, just yesterday, or was it Friday or Thursday? It might have been Thursday. I'm recording this on Saturday, but on a Thursday, I ordered in the morning. It was like 7:30 in the morning. I ordered a set of earbuds or headphones for working out and some protein powder, and it got delivered to me that night. It got delivered to me like 12 hours later. Like, how the hell can Amazon do that so efficiently, so consistently, no matter where in the world that I live? Let's say in America, let's just say at least. They're able to do that and deliver not even in 2 days, but not even half of 1 day, is because they have a super, super efficient system, and they measure. And that system is so tight that I don't think there's anyone who has a better idea than they do. All right, just out of your imagination. All right, this is not where you engage your imagination if you're working at Amazon or if you're working at McDonald's, because again, these systems have been perfected by data. It's not about your emotions and your feelings, it's about data. Whereas something like basketball with Chris Paul, it's really about deferring to the person who has the most experience and has the most knowledge. So again, your skill of discernment is how you decide whether to do one thing or do another. Sometimes in life you just don't want to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it makes sense. If I was playing on Chris Paul's team, I would probably follow Chris Paul's way of setting the screen and defending certain actions, because he just has some knowledge that I don't have. So I would defer to his way. It's not my job to come in and reinvent the wheel. So if your way is right and people need to just fall in line to your way, then you need to be a dictator, and you need to have the mental toughness, and you need to have the balls to be a dictator and tell people, hey, I know this way better than you. Shut the hell up and just follow what I'm saying. I talked about this in episode 1796, get some balls. If you were teammates, for example, in basketball with Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, or you were working at Apple when Steve Jobs was in charge, it's probably not a good idea to try to reinvent the wheel when you're working with those people, because you probably, first of all, you wouldn't be around for too long, and secondly, if we take your knowledge and experience versus theirs, you're probably going to lose. So you must know when to fall back and when to speak up, when to shut up and when to speak up. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is my way or the highway, when to be a dictator. Let's talk about how you deal with dictators and or when you are being a dictator. Sometimes you may be subject, as one of the subordinates, for example, sometimes you may be subject to the dictator's ideas. And it is not a good idea in those situations to fight a dictator. If you worked for Apple when Steve Jobs was in his heyday, it'd probably be a good idea to just do what Steve Jobs said. And if it ends up being wrong, then Steve Jobs can take the blame for it. He's not going to blame you because he told you to do it. Now, if you go against him and you end up being wrong, then you're going to get fired. Actually, you probably get fired before you even complete the going against him that you were trying. All right, if you're playing college sports, for example, the coach is in charge. If you try to get into a head-to-head battle with the coach as a college player and they're a college coach, when they're getting paid, you're not. They got a lot more leverage and power than you do. They're going to be around a lot longer than you will. You're going to end up off the team. That's a bad idea. I got into a battle with a dictator coach in college, and I ended up losing that battle. And I lost my opportunity to play because I made a bad decision to go against someone who was in a position with much more leverage and much more power than me. That was an error in judgment on my part. When you are dealing with a dictator, you must understand power dynamics. I talked about this in episode number 1847. You got to know the power dynamics in every situation. If your parents are telling you to do something and you decide not to do it, do you have any leverage to go against them if it becomes that? Probably not, then you probably should listen. All right, especially if you're living under their roof. All right, sometimes in life, it's either comply or bye-bye. All right, I'm gonna say that one more time. Keep this in mind. Comply or bye-bye. Any of you who's a boss or a parent or a coach, you might want to print that out and put it on the door of your office or bedroom somewhere so that all of your subordinates can see it. All right, I'm in charge. You either comply with me or you can say bye, because you won't be here. When you are a dictator, on the other hand, if you're going to dictate, make sure you have a solid reason for why you're dictating that you can stand on. Not necessarily because you owe your subordinates an explanation, but so that they understand the why behind what you're doing. So when you're dictating to them, they're not doing it just because they're forced to comply. They're doing it because obviously they know they have to comply because they're listening to this episode too, but also they know it makes sense. So yes, this person's dictating. Yes, they're saying my way or the highway, but their way actually works. Their way is going to help me. Their way is going to help all of us. So it makes sense that they're dictating because they clearly know more than we do. All right, as long as they understand why you're dictating, people will be okay with you dictating. I'm all right with, if I was working at Apple and Steve Jobs told me, hey, this is the way that you do it, Dre, I'll be all right with that because I trust Steve Jobs' judgment. If I'm playing with Michael Jordan, I'll listen to what Michael is telling me about how I'm going to play, how I'm going to defend the pick and roll because I trust Michael Jordan's judgment. Now, if I don't trust his judgment and I don't understand why he's saying things, but he's still dictating to me, now I might grudgingly comply or I might try to figure out a way how to get the hell out of here because I don't want to listen to this guy anymore because I don't really trust or respect his authority. People will respect your authority when you can explain why you have it and they can see, you can demonstrate why you have it. When you're a dictator, don't just dictate with no solid reasons behind it. All right, if you're a dictator and you're wrong all the time, then you're just an asshole. All right, you're just an asshole who's abusing your power. When you're a dictator and you're right all the time, you're a genius. All right, Steve Jobs was a genius. He was a dictator. Read the book by Walter Isaacson. He was definitely a dictator, but he was right all the time, so he's a genius. Michael Jordan was an asshole. You saw the Last Dance documentary, but he was right all the time, so he gets credit for being a genius. So make sure if you're going to be a dictator that you're right when you're saying things. Amazon's 14 Principles of Leadership. The link is down below. I told you, part 1 and part 2. One of the things that Amazon's Principles of Leadership says, check this out, is that they're right a lot. When you're a leader, most of the time you're right in the things that you say. You are correct. Leaders are not usually wrong that often. If you're wrong all the time, you're probably not going to be a leader because you don't know what you're talking about. Leaders are usually right. Jeff Bezos, I would bet people will say that he's a dictator at work. I haven't heard too many stories about how he does things, and I think he stepped down as CEO recently, but when he was doing his thing, I bet he dictated a lot, but he was right all the time, and that's why his company is worth what his company is worth. So if you're going to be a dictator, make sure you know what the hell you're talking about and what the hell you're doing so people can respect it. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is my way or the highway. When to be a dictator in life. For you personally, you need to be a dictator in your own life. Let's just step out of whatever organization you're a part of, whatever job you have, whatever company you run, your family, any groups you're a part of. Let's just talk about you looking in the mirror. You need to be a dictator in your own life. You have total power and control over your life, and you are the only one who gets to live with those results. That we can all agree with. So what I need you to do is take the wheel. You need to take the wheel and be the dictator in your own life in everything that you're doing. I'm going to do a whole episode just on this topic. As a matter of fact, I already did this episode, so I don't always record these in the order in which I come up with them. I talked about this in episode 1866. You drive your car. So that related episode I'm talking about here in point number 4 is again 1866. You got to be the driver of your own vehicle, because if you don't drive it, then somebody else is going to drive it, and I doubt you want to end up wherever they're going. All right, and we don't have, when it comes to personal leadership, we don't yet have autonomous vehicles. All right, you don't want AI driving your vehicle. And I don't mean Allen Iverson. I mean artificial intelligence. No, you need your own personal human intelligence. So use it. Let's recap today's class, which is my way or the highway. When to be a dictator. Shout out to Christina for this idea. Definition of a dictator is a ruler with total power over a country, typically one who has obtained control by force. That's in contrast to a democratic leader who does things by majority rules and by asking the group. I'm going to tell you when to not ask the group. Number 1, when things need to be done urgently and you know what you're doing. You don't need to poll the audience or ask the group. Just move on what you know is right. Sometimes we call this the executive decision. You make an executive decision sometimes when there is no clear-cut answer, but you're taking control and making a call. Many shy away from this because they're afraid of being wrong, but this is the obligation that comes with leadership. Point number 2, when things need to be done in a specific way and you are not open to variation. This is literally, not literally, but my way or the highway. This isn't always good. Sometimes it is. If you work at McDonald's or Amazon, you should probably just follow their way. But if you really know your stuff and it's kind of open to interpretation, you need to step up and take the lead. Take the wheel and tell everybody else to follow you. And sometimes you should reinvent the wheel and sometimes you should not. If you're playing with Michael Jordan, it's probably not a good idea to reinvent the wheel if he has already designed the wheel, because you probably won't be around for too long and you're not understanding power dynamics. Point number 3, when you're dealing with a dictator or being one, first of all, when you're dealing with one, sometimes you may be subject to their ideas. And it's not a good idea to fight the dictator because you're in a power struggle, and if they have the power and you don't, then you're going to lose. It just makes sense, right? Simple mathematics, simple algebra. When you're dealing with a dictator, understand, again, 1847 is the episode about power dynamics. You either comply or bye-bye, one or the other. When you are a dictator, make sure you have solid reasoning and solid substance behind your dictatorship. If you're a dictator, you need to be right more often than you're wrong. Like Amazon says, the principles of leadership. They don't put people in leadership positions who are wrong more times than they're right. It doesn't make any sense. When you're a dictator and you're wrong all the time, you're just an asshole. When you're a dictator and you're right all the time, like Steve Jobs and Michael Jordan, you're a genius. And point number 4, for you personally, be a dictator in your own life. You have total power and control over your life. You are the only one who gets to live with the results. Take the wheel, drive your own car, like I talked about in 1866. Send me a text. Tell me the best thing you got from today's masterclass. My number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.